lazy gistra. We mentioned gistra many times before. What is a gistra? When does a kli become a gistra? Remember, there's an important difference. A kli which is not a gistra is makabel tumah, and a small hole, even if the hole is big enough to make it tahor, but it still is not mavatal the shem kli from it. You can repair it. Once a kli is a gistra, then you cannot repair it, as we learned in the previous Mishnah. So what's called the gistra? Kol shenitlu os now. Any kli cheres which is missing an important part, for instance, one of the handles falls off, the rest of the kli, of course, is makabel tumah, because still complying with the shiurim mentioned in Perik Beis Mishnah Beis. However, it's called a gistra. If after the handle falls off, it now springs a leak of moitzi mashke, under the rule we've had before, that once a gistra itself is broken further, even with a very small leak, it becomes tar. A kli cheres breaks, and now you have a jagged edge, like this. So really what we're left with is a very large gistra. And what's difficult about this Mishnah is the Mishnah is now going to tell us how we measure and when we measure the avir of this kli. And the Mishnah is going to be using a shear of moitzi zayis. But we just said before that the shear to make a gistra tahor is moitzi mashke. And the Rash picks up on this, and the Rash makes a difference between nikev and isroya. Moitzi mashke is the general rule for a gistra shin isroya, which just becomes weakened or has a small leak. But if it's a proper nikev, a proper breakage, a hole in it, then even a gistra will have a moitzi zayis, the shear of moitzi zayis, to make it tahor. It's quite a complicated area. Exactly when does a gistra need a moitzi zayis? But anyway, the Mishnah is assuming that the gistra, that this kli with the jagged edges, is actually got a din of gistra, but it's still makabel. It's still got a din of kli cheres and is makabel tumah. Says the Mishnah, you draw a line round the edge, round the broken part. We're trying to measure at which point are the edges so far apart that the avir of the kli cheres stops. So the Mishnah says, we go up the jagged edge, up the gap created by the jagged edges. As long as the width of the breakage is not wide enough to let a zayis slip through, then up to that height, it's still called the toich of the kli cheres. Metame b'maga, uchenegdoi metame ba'avir. In other words, if a sheretz will be held inside the kli cheres, but in line with that part of the broken jagged edge, or even in line with a spacing in between, but where a zayis can't slip out, then that's still regarded as the toich of the kli cheres, and the kli cheres will become tomei. However, if we travel up the broken edges and we come to the part where it is so wide between the jagged edges that it can't even be makabel zayis, then that extra bit, those bits, haven't got any more din of toich kli cheres. They have a din of yad kli cheres. We mentioned this before. The din of a yad kli cheres is that it has the same din as the outside of a kli cheres. It is not able to pick up tumah and not able to be metame through its avir. It has no avir. The only tumah it has is that if the kli cheres became tomei because a sheretz was held in its real toich, then oichlin or mashkin, which touch the inside or the outside of the yad, pick up tumah just like the oichlin or mashkin would pick up tumah if they touch the outside of a kli cheres shenitma. There's different ways of learning this Mishnah, but the way we're going to learn it is we're going to read the word metame b'maga. That bit, the yad, is metame oichlin or mashkin, were the oichlin or mashkin to touch the yad. Ve'ein kenegdoi mitamo ba'avir. However, that part of the yad doesn't have it in avir. So if a sheretz would be suspended in the toich of the yad, then the yad isn't able to pick up tumah, to be makabel tumah through its avir. Hoysam muta al tzidov, the kli cheres, instead of being this way, was put on its side and broken. Kimin katadra, looks like a sedan chair, a big sort of chair on which one carries a posh lady, would be carried on one of these sedan chairs. So it's like a bowl, a long flat bowl. Again, the same rule. Anyway, if you're underneath the line through which a zayis can't slip out, it's able to pass tumah on and receive tumah, sai b'maga, sai b'avir, like a regular klicheres. As soon as you go further up, and now you're at the part of the klicheres where a zayis would slip out, that part is only a yad, and metame b'maga can only be metame ochlon umashkin, which touch it, but there is maga, ve'ein kenegdo mitamo ba'avir, but it hasn't got a din of avir klicheres, and therefore if a tumah was suspended opposite, in line, in the toich of that chelik of the klicheres higher than the makabel zeisim line, then the klicheres will not pick up tumah from that toich. And the Mishnah carries on, shulei kurpios v'shulei kusim hatzidonim. Kurpios and kusim hatzidonim are kelim actually which by themselves do not sit. They cannot sit. They've got a pointy edge, and if you put them on the table, they just fall over, they topple over. However, they are always used in such a way, for instance, one of them is put into a tripod. So although the keli itself can't be used, but its use is to be placed into a tripod, so it always balances in the tripod. One of them is always used to rest in the efer kira, in the ashes and the sand, so it's always got a base in which it can sit so it doesn't fall. We learnt before in Perik base Mishnah Ches about such a keli called a lapid, and we said that the fact that it can't stand by itself, but its general usage is to be supported by something else, then that's called having a toich, which is also the kabel. Now we're extending that then, and we're now dealing with a shulei kurpios. One of these kelim was broken off at the top, and all you're left with is the base. V'shulei kusim achitzonim, and the base of this kusim atzidonim. Kurpios is just a place, it's just like a type of keli with a point which comes from kurpi. Maybe that's called few. Shulei kusim hatzidonim from kelim. Kusim is the posuk kasais hanosech from Sidon. Although they cannot sit unsupported, then tamein. They are still tamein. In other words, a gistra which comes from a kli, but the original kli was made to be supported. Then the gistra too, even though it can only stand with a support, it's still tameim shelekach nasu mitchilosan, because that's how the original kli was made, to be supported by something else, and who had in the gistra.